Hi, and welcome back to the Comfort Table. I'm Teal. This is Cian. People often mention certain things about Singapore that they perceive to be positive points. But somehow, as someone living in Singapore, I feel that these things are overrated. So I wanted to share a few of them with Cian today to see if Cian also has any other overrated things about Singapore they want to bring up. Yeah, so the first thing that I get very often is that Singapore is summer all year round and how that is a good thing. Although it is summer, but it is like the tropical summer.
So-
It's hot and muggy and humid. Here, there's no 4 seasons. There's like 2 monsoon seasons throughout the year, but what it basically means is that it rains more and then it just rains. And then it rains more and then it just rains.
It gets a lot more humid. I only know the places where summer are really hot and humid as well, like Japan, Korea. Both have like really hot and humid summers as well.
Yeah.
Which I would say at some point gets even worse than Singapore. They're not really built for summer because
Yeah.
Singapore is summer all year round, so at least we plant a lot of trees, or we try to. I feel like I'm playing devil's advocate lah, just for fun. I fully agree. I do think summer all year round is a bit overrated, if only for the fact that like the passing of season helps you with like the passing of time, so it sort of like helps you organize your thoughts about this is a new year, or like
This season, you're supposed to do certain things.
honestly I like autumn, so yeah. I'm just sad that there's no autumn in Singapore.
Yeah. So I guess even though like Japan and Korea has like terrible summers, the thing is they only have summer for 4
Right.
months or less. We have summer for 12 months and there's no respite.
To be fair though, I hate winter, so I don't really want 4 seasons, I just want autumn. I don't mind the other 3 seasons, I just don't like winter.
But winter is cozy, you get to stay indoors. You get to stay indoors and nobody will judge you for it.
And I just feel very low energy. I think that's a very common problem though. Like, I think it's normal also to feel low energy. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's like the fact that we think we should be productive all year round that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, which is kind of like the mentality here because it's
Summer all year round.
summer all year round. There's no excuse to
Slack
be
off.
lazy.
I've I've heard an opinion somewhere that like people in hot weather should have it easier because it's like it's less work to survive. And then like how come all the first world countries are not on like around the equator? It is an interesting question though. One more thing I don't like about summer, or like I find overrated related to this, right, is all the outdoor areas. So things like squares,
Public spaces, beaches, alfresco dining.
yeah, alfresco dining is a sham in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you can just
You can eat indoors, enjoy the
it's same
aircon,
thing.
enjoy the same food without the glaring sun. So like I feel like this is a very Singaporean mentality to prefer the indoor sitting rather than outdoors. I feel like most of the time the people sitting in the outdoor areas tend to be like tourists or westerners.
One memory I have of university is
Yeah.
the exchange students. Some of them would be lying on the grass
Oh, yeah, in our university.
in the middle of the day and just like sun tanning on the grass.
They really enjoy the sun too.
Yeah, and all the locals are hiding in whatever shade of the buildings
I feel like it's a very tropical mindset to have
to seek
like
the shade.
yes, whereas I feel like maybe like the people who really like the sun in Singapore just are so used to it being the opposite way. That's why they really like the sun. I don't know. I feel like it's overrated because we're here, but then it's like not overrated for
Maybe
people
we
who
are
don't.
taking it for granted.
Yeah.
That we always have the heat, always have the sunlight.
I don't know. I feel like wardrobe wise is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you don't need like multiple wardrobes, but it's a bad thing because you don't get to have multiple wardrobes.
If you imagine the temperature around you is the same as your body temperature, why the do you,
Not 37 lah. It's usually like 32, 33
Do you need-
degrees Celsius.
I mean, of course you have to wear clothes because if not you get arrested.
Distance.
But there's only like so many layers of clothes that you can take off before you have
Before-
nothing else to take off, right? Unless you want to get arrested. Yeah, but if you're in a cold place, you can just pile on the layers.
But it restricts your mobility though. Like I realized that when I was like, I can't pile on more gloves. Like I cannot move. You get what I mean? Like yeah.
But you only have to suffer that for like winter. It's not the whole year. where you feel like your
I know,
skin
but then
needs to be
like,
ripped off
but then
because
like
it's so hot.
living in a place when I was on exchange, living in Korea where there was winter, right? It was like so painful to do your daily activities and kind of I guess because I go in with the mindset of like I'm expecting the same level of like productiveness that I'm used to. Yeah, so when Teal suggested this topic, the first thing that immediately came to mind for like what I find overrated in Singapore is MBS or Marina Bay Sands. So it's meant to be like a very iconic it's meant to really be an icon for Singapore, and like I think it has served its job really well. Like it's definitely like distinctive. And then you look at it, you know, it's Singapore. It has appeared in like quite a lot of media and I think films. And oftentimes when people want to talk about Singapore, that's the picture they like to use. That and like super trees, I guess. But super trees are a bit like older now lah. So I do feel a bit of a sense of pride when I see it because it's like, oh, people recognize that this is Singapore. Yes, it is good as an icon, but it's overrated because as a space it's horrible. So MBS has a few parts. There's the hotel portion, there's the mall portion, and then there's a convention portion. So I haven't personally been to the hotel portion. I'll talk mainly about like the convention and the mall parts. My opinion of the mall, which you can freely enter, it's like it's just a regular mall. Regular if every single shop is like very pricey and branded, and
It's all like luxury brands.
yes, and I feel like it's really targeted at tourists and relatively wealthy tourists, and it's not particularly welcoming to like majority of people. As an icon of Singapore, not being so welcoming to Singaporeans, but being very welcoming to tourists, to me that feels a bit like off. I feel like, you know, we could be in like some other country, we could be in like Dubai or something. And like the convention portion of it,
Convention hall. Convention
the-
center.
yeah, they have a few convention halls. So I think like basement, level 1, and then there's a bunch on like level 2 and above as well. I've only been to like basement, level 1, level 2, and I think there are some like smaller. So they're like super huge convention halls on those levels, and then I think there's smaller convention rooms on like higher levels. I can't remember. Anyway, I've been there for like conventions, for cosplay conventions. I mean, not while in cosplay, but like just to see. And then like I've been there for work as well, like just like work conventions, which by the way are not fun. I think the main thing that I don't really like about it for like fun events like cosplay and anime conventions is that like them being held in MBS feels a bit too formal. Like even Suntec Convention Hall is better, I would say. Even though Suntec is also a bit formal, but it's a bit more hidden. Whereas MBS feels a bit like I feel a bit like a little kid playing like in an adult's playground, that kind of vibe. And like for work, I feel the same lah. I just feel like a fraud. But I mean, that's just
That's
in
just how it
general.
is at work, right?
Yeah, so I feel like MBS as an icon works really well, but I don't honestly really like it as a space.
Other than the iconic silhouette, the other iconic thing about the Marina Bay Sands hotel is the infinity pool on the top deck,
Yeah.
which crosses all 3 towers. So I've actually been in the hotel and up to the pool.
Do you swim in the pool?
No, because it was really crowded. Yeah, so the hotel room, it wasn't one of the higher floors, it wasn't one of the expensive rooms. I think it was like the entry level. Yeah, so I mean, it's just like a regular, nice hotel room. It's big, spacious. The toilet is nice. The balcony, there's a balcony. It's nice if you can take the Singapore heat.
Right. Back to the weather again.
Yeah, and then the pool is just like, it's just a pool with like
Very
pool
high up.
chairs and like a bar, and you can just look over the rest of Singapore.
I find it very interesting because a lot of foreigners really want to come to the infinity pool, or like have a few nights stay or like even just one night stay at the MBS.
Because it's so iconic that it's like a checklist thing.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so. But I personally never really wanted to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. When I say I'm from Singapore and then people tell me, oh, when I visit Singapore I want to stay in MBS
And like go to the infinity
and
pool.
like go to the infinity pool. And then you know, me as a Singaporean, I've never had this desire to. Okay, maybe because
It's so near.
I don't need to stay in a hotel.
That's true. Yeah.
So I'm not particularly interested in hotels.
Yeah. I don't know whether it's also a case of like just in general because people like the grass is always green on the other side, so you don't really care about like being a tourist in the places that are near you. I don't know if it's a result of that, but to me, I just find MBS in general, like the experience is a bit overrated.
It just feels like there's nothing particularly Singapore about it.
Yeah.
It's just an expensive hotel.
An icon, but not particularly a nice spot, I would say.
Like, if I wanted to stay at an expensive hotel in Singapore, I would choose, like, the Raffles Hotel or something. Another thing that Singapore is often praised for is its cleanliness. There's this image that Singapore is very clean because, like, the streets have no
Like
litter
rubbish,
on it.
yeah.
And, you know, there's dustbins everywhere. It's clean because there are people hired to clean. It's not clean because everybody, I mean, of
Like
course,
as a society.
as a
right?
society, cleans up after themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the things I appreciate, but I also sometimes feel like it's also quite true because if you do look closely, Singapore is not that clean.
Yeah, so especially if you go to
Yeah.
places where there's nobody hired to clean it. For example, if you go to the beach, there's like
A
tons of litter
a
on
lot
the
of
beach.
rubbish. There's a lot of like cigarette butts,
Empty bottles.
wrappers.
And now recently, like, disposable masks.
Yeah, yeah. And also areas that cleaners can't reach. So like on the tops of like those like high-rise buildings have a lot of like eaves, and then like a lot of times nowadays especially you see a lot of disposable masks on it.
So this is actually quite funny because there's sometimes I get dental floss on the eave of my
Window.
window, and obviously someone upstairs has thrown it. Right? Like who why would you throw used dental floss out the window? Just throw it in the bin, right? But
It reminds me of something.
No.
In my old house, right, in my old flat, I could see my neighbour's toilet window, like the small one. And then like there were always toothbrushes on the ledge.
Why would you throw them?
I have no idea. So it's like one of those louvered windows, right? And then outside those louvers, like on the outside of the building, there's like 4 or 5 toothbrushes, and it's not like you're just storing them there. Because I think the moment you open the louvers, they'll just drop out. So I have no idea how they made their way there.
Yeah. And not only about litter, but there are some very unhygienic practices. Of course, not everybody does it, but
example?
it's not non-existent. So, for example, sometimes people would just like spit into the grass
Oh, right. I think that's still a very common
or like
practice.
spit onto the pavement.
Yeah.
Then, especially for, I guess, food courts or hawker centers, there are people
Before
who would
the-
just leave their trash on the table, and some people are not very meat eaters. So if they're eating like prawns or pork ribs or something, they'll just like put the prawn shell or the pork rib on the table itself. Or,
Not even the tray.
not even the tray, but they do things outside that they wouldn't do in their own homes because there's somebody cleaning up after them. I think that's a very entitled kind of mindset. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Singapore has tried to curb this by introducing this
Like the clean
law
your own tray thing.
where you have to clear your own tray. But the thing is, you can clear your own tray and your crockery, your plates, bowls, chopsticks.
The
spoons,
table is
whatever.
sometimes
the
still dirty.
table
Yeah.
is still dirty because you have like
Random
soup,
spots of soup.
rice, shells, bones, I don't know what else, like tissues left on the table.
Yeah.
It's a bit sad, actually, that, people don't really have the civic consciousness to clean up after themselves.
Can I just like talk about one random pet peeve? So like, I would generally not sit on the inner side of the bus, like the seat that's closer to the window, because nowadays it's not that bad, but like when it was the old buses, there used to be a lot of dust on the tiny little ledge of the windows, and it just irks me to sit so close to those dust.
And the other thing about public transport, right, is that sometimes people put their feet up on the seats. They just like put their whole feet up. And I've also seen people cutting their toenails, cutting their fingernails on public transport.
That's one of the things that's a bit strange. I
And
don't know why
it's
people
not those kind of like nail clippers with the compartment that holds your clippings. No, they just like
just leave their trimmings
let it
everywhere.
free. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a bit strange.
Yeah, so there are some disgusting people in this country.
I mean, yeah, I suppose that's something that can't really be helped, but
Yeah.
as a society, I would say we rely very heavily on our cleaners.
To maintain this image of cleanliness.
Okay, so like the last thing that T wanted to talk about today is cheap food.
I guess you can get cheap food options if you
Yeah.
go to like hawker centers or coffee shops, where you can get like a full meal for $5. There's a range, whether you want to eat cheap or whether you want to eat expensive.
Yeah.
And I guess in other countries, dining out is often seen as something that's very expensive, which is not necessarily the case here in Singapore. So I guess in other countries there's this culture of like cooking because it's much cheaper. However, that does not apply in Singapore because groceries are so expensive. Or not so expensive, that they are definitely expensive. So if you look at any of those like cost of living comparison between cities,
Yeah.
the cost of groceries in Singapore is pretty high compared to similar cities. That's because most
of the food here is imported.
most of the produce here is imported.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's this initiative of like 30% by 30 by 30, which is like 30% of produce is to be locally produced
By
by 2030. So as you can see, like it's not even at 30% now, right? Can you imagine how much is being imported and how expensive that is? I mean, it's not priced out of the average person's budget, but it's still more expensive than, in equivalent cities.
I would say that I didn't really think about this until I went to UK, and then I wasn't there for very long, but then we decided to buy some food to cook. The groceries there are really cheap, especially like the fresh vegetables, fruits. I suppose
Yeah.
because they grow it. Probably have more
Somewhere.
local sources, right? I don't particularly notice the groceries.
That's because we don't really buy groceries
Oh
for
yeah,
ourselves.
that's true.
Yeah.
To be fair, yeah. Initially, T wanted to say about for cheap food. It's not true that it's not. I mean, it's true that it is cheap, but then you can't find. It's quite difficult to find healthy food
That is
cheap.
affordable, yeah.
Sometimes when we like bring exchange students to try local food, I think like sometimes they say that it's a bit too greasy, or like there's a lot of heavy tasting sauce, I guess, which is nice, but like not if you eat them every day or at once, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's true that there's cheap food. And like I feel like mixed veg is one of like the leading examples of like cheap food. And like if you choose wisely, you can get relatively healthier. Yeah, you can get relatively healthy options, but you really have to choose very wisely. Like you have to skip all the things that are possibly like fried.
Yeah, and also the thing about eating out, right?
Yeah.
Dining out is that, like, although, for example, the cai fan, right? The veg may look healthy, but I mean, because it's veg, it is the healthier option, but it's not necessarily a healthy way of cooking it because they put a lot of salt, they put a lot of oil. Like you can see the vegetable glistening under the light.
That's why I say you have to
Yeah.
choose, right? So like when I feel like I need to be healthy, but you'll end up with very plain food if you try and choose healthy,
like
like
steamed egg.
yeah,
boiled
steamed egg,
vegetable.
and then you have to choose like the vegetable that looks like it's
Spinach
boiled
or something.
or steamed or like
Yeah.
minimal sauce. And then like for meat, right, if you do eat meat, or you can choose fish lah, which is more expensive, but if you choose meat, which I would, then usually it's something like sliced pork with ginger or something, because that's like the only meat option that's not fried. Like for a typical
For not fried or like deep
for
fried,
a typical
right?
like
Yeah.
mixed veg store, like my usual go-to would be like the sweet and sour pork, but that's
Which is fried,
That's
yes.
fried, yeah. And even brinjal,
It's also
which is like one
fried.
of my favorite vegetables, but at the mixed veg store it's usually fried as well. So
Or you can go for yong tau fu, which is like boiled. I mean, you can pick the pieces
You
that
have
are
to-
to be boiled and not the
yes,
fried one.
no, but you also have to choose the clear soup and not like
laksa. soup.
laksa or tom yum or whatever, right? There's a lot of unhealthy options if you want to choose them, and they're tasty. That's the
That's
that's
the
the-
trap.
that's the
the danger, yeah.
But I have to say though, I honestly like the food culture in Singapore. I enjoy that there's a lot of food, like a huge variety of food, at like various price range, and that you can generally easily get them. Because I mean, one thing is that Singapore is relatively small, so it's quite easy to get anywhere. Whenever I was overseas for like a longer period of time, the thing that I really miss is like the ease of just getting like any kind of food that I want. I think I'm very spoiled for that. Whereas when I was in Korea, when I just wanted, I don't know, I just wanted like something that was not Korean food, right? The only easily available option was like Western. And then maybe like if you are in like more popular areas, because like where I was studying on exchange is not that popular, right? So as in it's not a city area. We have to travel to more like central areas to get like Japanese food. And even then it was like Kokochibanya kind of stuff. So it's kind of like generic. I feel like food is a very big topic that Singaporeans have to talk about. It's sort of true, but I also really enjoy the food culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's the overrated things we think about Singapore. I mean, it's up to you whether you find them overrated, but
These are what we find overrated.
that's all for today's video. Let us know whether you find anything in your own country overrated or whether you agree with our picks for what we find overrated in Singapore. Alright, that's all.
Bye.